And so we've got to shore up the mortgage market to make sure that we don't have millions of people who are losing their homes. We're going to have to, I think, change our tax code. For us to provide tax breaks to the wealthiest among us, those who didn't need them and weren't even asking for them, at a time when ordinary folks are struggling to fill up the gas tank just to get to a job. I met a guy here in Pennsylvania when Bob Casey and I were traveling around who told me his problem was he's looking for a job and it costs him more than he can afford just to go to a job interview. And so we've got to give them some tax relief, and we've got to invest in our infrastructure to create jobs, particularly those who are going to be getting laid off of the construction industry as the housing market goes down. And I've put forward very specific plans for that. We're going to have to, I think, invest heavily in clean energy. And if we have a cap and trade system, we can generate $150 billion over 10 years to invest in solar and wind and biodiesel and train people to build windmills and build solar panels and make buildings more energy efficient and make alternative fuels. All these things will strengthen the economy generally. And I left out one last point, healthcare. People are falling into bankruptcy. They are going without medical care. It is a moral imperative that we make sure that we have a plan in place that provides health care to every single American and that has high quality and provides prevention. If we do those things, and that applies not just to poor people but to working and middle-class families all across the country, then we also have to focus on those who, even when the economy is good and the middle class are doing well, are still impoverished. And that's a special challenge. And that involves, I think, going at the problem at its roots very early. Investing in early childhood education, working with at-risk parents, drastically improving our education system, K through 12, by paying our teachers more and demanding more from them, making sure that we have after-school programs and summer school programs, and many of these, by the way, can be part of a faith community. And so, just to go back to our theme here tonight, people sometimes ask me, what do I think about faith-based initiatives? I want to keep the Office of Faith-Based Initiatives open, but I want to make sure that its mission is clear. It's not to simply build a particular faith community. The faith-based initiatives should be targeted specifically at the issue of poverty and how to lift people up. And partnering with faith communities, I think we can achieve that as long as it's within the requirements of our Constitution, and we make sure that it's open to everybody. It's not simply the federal government funding certain groups to be able to evangelize.
Let's go to Dr. David Gushee, who's the president of Evangelicals for Human Rights. Dr. Gushee.
Senator Obama, recently yet another disturbing memo emerged from the Justice Department. This one said that not even interrogation methods that, quote, shock the conscience would be considered torture, nor would they be considered illegal if they had been authorized by the president. Senator Obama, this kind of reasoning shocks the conscience of many millions of Americans and many millions of people of faith here and around the world. Is there justification for policies on the part of our nation that permit physical and mental cruelty toward those who are in our custody?
We have to be clear and unequivocal. We do not torture. Period. We don't torture. Our government does not torture. That should be our position. That should be our position. That will be my position as president. That includes, by the way, renditions. We don't farm out torture. We don't subcontract torture. And the reason this is important is not only because torture does not end up yielding good information. Most intelligence officers agree with that. I met with a distinguished group of former generals who have made it their mission to travel around and talk to presidential candidates and to talk in forums about how this degrades the discipline and the ethos of our military. It is very hard for us when kids 19, 20, 21, 22 are in Iraq having to make difficult decisions, life or death decisions every day, and are being asked essentially to restrain themselves and operate within the law. And then to find out that our own government is not abiding by these same laws that we are asking them to defend, that is not acceptable. And so my position is going to be absolutely clear. And it is also important for our long-term security to send a message to the world that we will lead not just with our military might, but we are going to lead with our values and our ideals. That we are not a nation that gives away our civil liberties simply because we're scared. And we're always at our worst when we're fearful. And one of the things that my religious faith allows me to do, hopefully, is not to operate out of fear. Fear is a bad counsel. And I want to operate out of hope and out of faith.
We're almost out of time. I asked the same question of Senator Clinton, though, and it's that there are a lot of Americans who believe the conversation going on here tonight is not necessarily appropriate. They believe that religion has far too much influence in public life. What do you say to that?
Well, what I've written in the past, I actually spoke at a Sojourners Forum 2 years ago on this precise issue. And I think that we've fallen into a false debate. On the one hand, there have been elements, many of them in my own party, in the Democratic Party, that believe that any influence of religion whatsoever in the public debate somehow is problematic or violates church and state. On the other hand, there have been those primarily in the other party, in the Republican Party, whose view has been that the separation between church and state shouldn't even be there. And I think both extremes are wrong. What I believe is that all of us come to the public square with our own values and our ideals and our ethics, what we believe. And people of religious faith have the same right to come to that public square with values and ideals that are rooted in their faith. And they have the right to describe them in religious terms, which has been part of our history. As I said in some of my writings, imagine Dr. King, going up before, in front of the Lincoln Memorial and having to scrub all his religious references, or Abraham Lincoln in the second inaugural not being able to refer to God. What religious language can often do is allow us to get outside of ourselves and mobilize around a common good. On the other hand, what those of us of religious faith have to do when we're in the public square is to translate our language into a universal language that can appeal to everybody. And both Lincoln and King did this, and every great leader did it. So because we are not just a Christian nation. We are a Jewish nation, we are a Buddhist nation, we are a Muslim nation, Hindu nation, and we are a nation of atheists, non-believers. And it is important for us not to try to kill the debate by saying, well, God tells me I'm right, and so I'm not going to listen to you. Rather, we've got to translate whatever it is that we believe into a language that allows for argument, allows for debate, and also allows that we may be wrong. And the biggest danger, I think, for those of us with religious faith when we're in the public sphere is a certain self-righteousness, where we start thinking that, well, I got a direct line to God. That is incompatible with democracy. You may have a direct line to God, but that is not the public square is not the place for us to empower ourselves in that way.
Many more questions, I'm sure, but we have to end it there. We're out of time. Senator Barack Obama, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Pleasure.